Can you talk a little bit about like the high level methodology or the technique that you've learned over the years or that conversion copywriters use that make writing stuff like that so easy for you? Like there's obviously a process, some technique to this. Like what have you learned over the years that makes it possible for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah.
Okay. So in 2016, I had a surgery, in my leg. Something had to be removed. It's fine. I'm okay. And so, you and I know each other. When I walked in, you weren't like, oh, that guy walks funny, right? So you wouldn't know necessarily that there's anything going on. However, sometimes when I'm like laying on the couch at my house, my 8-year-old will run at me and he'll like hit my leg funny and I'll like yelp out in pain, okay? And the metaphor here is that a good writer will tap into those kind of hidden pains, those hidden desires that you don't share with most people.
Right.
And it makes you feel seen, okay? So what I like to say is that my best copy isn't created, it's stolen. But I don't steal it from other writers, I steal it from the reader. Okay? So what that means is I have a very deep understanding of who that reader is.
Right.
All right. So Abe Lincoln's got the quote, if you want to chop a tree down, you got an hour. You're going to spend 45 minutes on the axe, right? Sharpening it up. For us as copywriters, what that means is I'm going to spend most of my time really understanding who it is I'm trying to influence.
Okay, so that is really interesting. The phrase you used, which I love, is it makes them feel seen. And the way to do that is to essentially steal the words straight from their mouth, or if you're really good at it, straight from their brain, because they may not even be like talking about it openly.
Yeah.
So how do you go about extracting that? If it's like this buried in there thing of theirs, what's the process? What's the rigorous steps you follow to kind of extract that? So then the writing later on, that 25% where you actually are putting pen to page, is a lot easier and you're capturing the right stuff.
Yeah, it's an exciting question because I think a lot of contractors will feel a little bit overwhelmed with any sort of marketing writing, any sort of writing that's forward facing in the business, because, hey, like we didn't get into the business to become like great writers. And the reason why that feeling is there is often we think of writing as this big creative task, right? But if you have a method, a framework for it, we can shift away from like, okay, I need to have this kind of madman approach to creating ads or job postings and just keep it really simple. And that's what I'll share right now is the methodology. And so I said we want to get to know our prospect, our reader. The way that we do that in our agency is two things, okay? The first thing we'll do is we'll survey real people who match that persona. So as an example, if you're about to, create an ad for your company, instead of just kind of drumming up an ad or hiring an agency to do that, you go out and you speak to the 5 best customers you've ever had. Right?
Yeah.
And you get ask them questions that are going to help you understand them on a deeper level, how they phrase their pains, how they phrase the transformation that they were looking for when they came to you. Also, what concerns or objections are they kind of dealing with or were they dealing with, and how did you overcome those, right? So I'm really looking for how they phrase it, and I'm actually recording their responses instead of taking bullet notes, because I'll put it in my own kind of professional speak, and that's not what we want. We want them to say exactly what they were thinking, and we're going to use that later on. Okay, so that's kind of step 1, right? Is this survey that we go through, and I don't mean go and speak to 100 people. 5 is a good number because it's achievable, but it'll give you a good amount of information and pattern building to start with.
That's a lunch, a Zoom call, a phone call, something where you go in with some questions and you're ready to really focus, actively listen, and take notes.
Yep.
And like, I like that. You're saying 5. Like that's maybe use that rule of thumb. 5 interviews is going to give you enough color, enough story, enough narrative to draw from when you go to write.
Yeah. So when I share this with business owners, we do a bit of training, and they're like, okay, how do I ask this? I don't want to come off as, bugging my best clients or whatever. And the way I frame this is always for the service of the client. So what you would say, you reach out to your client, you say, listen, we're growing the business and we want to make sure we're serving you at the highest level. I'd love to, either take you out for coffee or just record a 15-minute Zoom call, no preparation required, where we'll ask you some simple questions. It's going to help us provide service at a higher level. And also we want to attract other great clients just like yourself.
So if you were doing this as a marketing exercise, you were writing, client-facing copy, you'd be doing this with clientele. If you were doing this with like you were wanting to write better job ads, and I think we're going to go through a detailed example later, are you literally going out and meeting job seekers? Are you meeting past employees? Like, who's the right person to extract information from in that example?
Yeah, fantastic question. Best case scenario, you've got a couple guys on your team who are the right type of people that you're looking to clone. You're going to speak to them, right?
Okay.
And they might be past employees. If that's not the case, like, hey, I don't really like the people on my team right now. Who am I going to talk to? Well, think about the people in your network, right? Like, who do you look at and be like, man, you guys have the best crew. Do you know somebody in your network that you can speak to that fits that mold? You don't want to. Again, this is not creative writing, right? Stop like trying to imagine what they're going to say and go talk to the right people. So if you need to do a little bit of reaching out, then do that.
I think in a way it's kind of a relief to hear that. I think that when you're as busy as an entrepreneur is, and you have as many plates spinning as you do, I think even the more creative ones probably find the moments where there's like deep work and ability to focus and write something out that's beautiful, like just seems impossible to pin down. So when you kind of say, hey, this is more of a rote process, this is a methodology, this is a little bit more of like a science experiment than it is a creative endeavor, kind of takes some pressure off.
Yeah, that's the idea for sure.
So you're doing these interviews, what kind of stuff are you trying to extract in particular?
Yeah, so 3 things, right? We want to understand the pain in the way that they phrase it. So a job seeker might be feeling stuck. They might not like the pay that they're getting. They might not like certain scenarios that happen in the workplace. So we want to understand those in the way that they phrase it. We also want to understand like what their deep desire is. What is the transformation that they're looking for that you're going to be able to deliver on, right? So again, how are they phrasing that desire? And then the last thing, if possible, we want to extract what are the common concerns. In salesmanship, it's objections. That's what we call it. I love calling it a concern because an objection is something to be handled. A concern is something to be resolved. And we want our copy later on to really address each of these concerns in a really clean way. And so these people are really good sources for those concerns as well.
Can we linger on this concept of pain for a second? This is just interesting. And if you've done sales training, like Sandler Sales, they'll say this all the time, like sell to pain. It's you talk to marketers and they bring up the same thing. What's your just take on the psychology there? Like, why is capturing that so important in the context of conversion copy?
Yeah, I think it's rooted in psychology, right? So pain is something that human beings are programmed to avoid.
Yeah.
And it's survival, right? So when we see it in our daily lives now, when somebody's kind of twists a knife on something that is an active pain and a big one in our lives, we pay attention. So that's a big battle in a world full of noise, right? Can we even get people to pause long enough to look at what we have to say, right? So I think that's it, right? And I mentioned, my leg, like that physical and emotional response is really what we're trying to elicit, and it gets people to lean in, right? And that's what we want. We don't want just a casual, yeah, that's interesting. Like we see a ton of ads, ton of random stuff, and we're just going to skip over 99.9% of it. But if something calls me out by name almost, then I'm going to pay attention.
Listen, if you like that clip, you can watch the full episode by clicking here. If you're not yet subscribed, you probably should be, and you can do that by clicking right here.